Welcome to the F1 News Zone, the show where we round up the biggest stories in Formula 1 right now. F1 was back with the Dutch Grand Prix last week, but what can we expect from this weekend's Italian Grand Prix? Well, we've got a driver change at Williams, controversial changes to the Monza circuit, as well as theories on why Lando Norris's starts have been so bad this season. All that and much more coming right up. So the Dutch Grand Prix was on yesterday, and in reaction to that, I always do some videos kind of going over the biggest talking points really after these events. Now, this obviously was the first race after the summer break. There's been about 4 weeks or so for the cars and the drivers, for the cars to get upgraded and the drivers to have some rest and kind of take stock of how things were in the first 14 rounds of the season and kind of push on from there. Now, for me, the main talking point really was how dominant in the end Lando Norris was in this race. I mean, he won by such a huge margin. Now, with that in mind, I wanted to ask, should Red Bull and Max Verstappen be worried about this? Well, I think Red Bull should definitely be worried about it. Max Verstappen's a bit more of a murky situation, really, and I'll explain why in this video in a bit. But let's focus on the thing that I think without a doubt is a concern, and it was already a concern for Red Bull coming into this race, but it definitely is after as well. You have to look at the Constructors' Championship for this, because the main attention for fans is the Drivers' Champion. You know, you always think about the guys who win the championship, and that isn't always the one who wins the Constructors' Championship. You know, there's the Drivers' Championship and the Constructors, but the Constructors is the important one to the teams because that is where the money's paid out. You know, you could have, for example, Max Verstappen in 2021 where he won the Drivers' Championship, but Mercedes won the Constructors' Championship. From a team point of view, that was a good season. But obviously Verstappen took all the headlines because he won his first Drivers' Championship. But that's not where the money's paid. The money is handed out depending on whether you finish in the Constructors' Championship. The prestige is more about the Drivers' Championship, I'd say, on kind of like a promotional kind of global level and stuff like that. But when it comes down to the cold hard cash, that's where the Constructors' Championship is. And the gap has gone down between Red Bull and McLaren down to 30 points now. Now, in theory, that gap could, evaporate completely at the Italian Grand Prix. I don't think it will, because I think Red Bull are scoring well enough to hold off McLaren. But for me, I think that McLaren really are the favourites now at this point. And for the Constructors, I mean, they've been the bookies' favourites for the Constructors for some time now. That is not news at all. And you look at the form of how that gap has been reducing. It's been reducing consistently now for a good while. Red Bull have not won a race since Max Verstappen won the Spanish Grand Prix. It's now been 6 races since they won a race, which, that's not great from a team that's looking to win the Constructors' Championship. So for me, Red Bull should be without a doubt very concerned and very worried for the Constructors' Championship. I think that is probably going to go to McLaren as things are. Yeah, I mean, maybe the upgrades have worked for Red Bull, but they haven't really improved the car that much compared to what it was before, certainly compared to the McLaren. And I think that if Oscar Piastri got by Charles Leclerc, I think he would have been challenging Max Verstappen by the finish. But as it was, he finished in 4th place. But Lando Norris, though, I mean, even though he got a poor start, even though he dropped behind Max Verstappen again, which is exactly what happened at the Spanish Grand Prix. But that time, McLaren didn't have the pace, didn't have the strategy to be able to pass Max by the finish. This time they did, though. Lando Norris passed Max Verstappen, what was it, like 15 or something like that, and pulled out a 22-second gap by the finish. That is as dominant as Max was in the Bahrain Grand Prix and the Japanese Grand Prix. When he was really just miles clear of everybody, and Red Bull were looking absolutely certain for another double, another Drivers' and Constructors' Championship. So they should absolutely be concerned about that. But what about the Drivers' Championship? What about the Drivers' Championship? Because this is where things get a little less certain, in my opinion, because there is still a 70-point gap between Verstappen and Norris. And for me, I think it's too early to tell whether they should be too worried about this. And I say that because McLaren seems to be very dominant around high downforce, low-speed circuits in Formula 1. They were very dominant in both Hungary and the Netherlands. But around higher speed tracks, it was Mercedes that won. Austria, Britain, Belgium. What's coming up next? Monza, high-speed circuit. We've got Baku, that's a high-speed circuit. We've got Mexico, high-speed circuit. Qatar, high-speed circuit. Las Vegas, high-speed circuit. Even Abu Dhabi is quite a high-speed circuit these days. So for me, the proof will have to be in the Italian pudding in a week's time. How McLaren do there is going to be key, because for me, if Mercedes win in Monza, which they could do, you know, with how they've been at high-speed circuits recently, that will mean that even though Red Bull aren't winning, it'll mean that Mercedes are getting the lion's share of points and therefore making the most ground up. And Mercedes are so far back in the constructors that I don't really see them threatening Red Bull. I don't see, even if Mercedes win in Monza, Baku, Las Vegas, Mexico, Qatar, Abu Dhabi, like I mentioned, I don't think that'll be enough. Because Red Bull are still going to be in there. You know, Max Verstappen just needs to keep getting podiums and he'll win the championship this year. Doesn't matter what. Lando Norris can win every single race. But as long as Max Verstappen's on the podium every time, and with a few seconds in there, he's still going to win the championship. So for me, it is far from panic stations yet when it comes to Lando Norris and Max Verstappen in the drivers, but in the Constructors' Championship, the panic button should be pressed at this point. I think Red Bull are going to start to get a bit desperate, because if they lose that Constructors' Championship, heads will roll. And I think one of those heads that will roll will be Sergio Perez, but we'll see what happens with all that. What are your guys' thoughts on this? Who's going to win the Constructors' Championship this season? Who's going to win the Drivers' Championship? And should Red Bull be concerned by the pace of McLaren, and more particularly the pace of Lando Norris as well? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And for much more F1 content, please like, share, subscribe, comment, and ring the bell as well for much more F1 news right here on the Formula1Chronicle.com. So Lando Norris won the Dutch Grand Prix yesterday, which obviously is very positive for him, very positive for McLaren, but there is one aspect to his race that showed that it's not really all perfect at McLaren. And I'm saying this as a McLaren fan as well, saying this as someone who, you know, likes to analyse these races and kind of look at the deeper meaning behind what's going on here. And obviously Lando Norris slipped down to second place from pole position, which is exactly what happened at Spain as well. Well, it actually was worse in Spain, because he went down from first position down to third, which is the same thing as what happened in Hungary as well, P1 to P3. And in fact, it's a very worrying stat for Lando Norris that he's never led on the end of the first lap when starting from pole position, and that's even if you include his sprint pole in China this year as well. He was in 7th place after the first lap there. The same thing happened with Brazil. He started on pole there, it was P3 for the sprint, and in Russia, in his first pole in 2021, he was in 2nd place there too. So what gives? What's going on here? Is this a Lando problem, or is this a car problem? Well, let's hear from the man himself here, because I've got an interview here from RacingNews365.com. Now, I believe this was taken from a question they asked during the post-race podium interview at the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. He said the following: "We know what to do. We know what's required to do a perfect start. But we're talking about fine margins here, because we both didn't get it right," referring to himself and Oscar Piastri, who also lost positions at the start. "It seems maybe there was more an underlying issue, or something wasn't how it was supposed to be, or we've clearly misjudged something more than what others did." So yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't know what he's kind of referring to there. I mean, interestingly, and I've yet to back this stat up, but I believe this is true, the reaction time of both Max and Lando at the start of the Dutch Grand Prix was exactly the same, 0.28 seconds. So it's not a reaction time issue. It seems to be, I mean, if you look at his onboard when he's actually starting the race, which is in the gyro cam as well, which is really cool. I love the gyro cam around Zandvoort. It was made for that track, really. You can see that it's not really the start, the reaction time, the actual initial getaway. It's more when he's when it actually gets moving, the car sort of judders. It doesn't really go. It's a bit like when you're trying to get your car going and you've selected too high of a gear, it judders, it kind of struggles to get going. It was a little bit like that, and he's absolutely right. It's very marginal. That's the thing. It's very, very marginal, because Formula 1 cars are incredibly high performance. They're so fast. They're the fastest cars in the world, after all. And the slightest little error or the slightest little suboptimal aspect to your car is absolutely left hung out to dry. And that's what happened here, because obviously he lost first place to Max Verstappen. And yeah, it's 7 times. 6 times this has happened now, if you include his two sprint proles in both China and Brazil as well. So I personally think, looking at these onboards, I personally think that it does seem to be something with the car. It seems like too much of a coincidence, and it happens to Piastri a little bit too as well. There is something up with that McLaren when it comes to the starts, but there is absolutely nothing up with that McLaren, nothing wrong with that McLaren when it comes to the overall pace in the race. They were incredible, and I've already done a video as well, which should come out around the same time as this one, going into, whether Red Bull should be concerned about the pace of McLaren and of Lando Norris in particular. That video should be out at the same time as this one. But yeah, interesting one for sure. The reaction time's not the problem. It just seems there's something else wrong with the car. What that is, I don't know. Lando Norris obviously isn't going to say, but clearly there's something there. Sometimes drivers do struggle with starts, but Lando Norris has had plenty of practice at them. He's in his 6th season of Formula 1 racing this year, I think. He made his debut in 2019, didn't he? So, he's not an inexperienced driver, and the same thing has happened to Oscar Piastri too. So what do you guys think? What is the problem with McLaren at starts? Is this something they should be concerned with, and how do they fix it? What could be going on here? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below as always. And of course, keep subscribed to the F1Chronicle.com to see much more analysis, reaction, and everything in between from the world of Formula 1. Guys, we've got some huge breaking news that's just come to us here on the F1Chronicle.com. Franco Colapinto has been confirmed to be replacing Logan Sargeant for the remainder of the 2024 Formula 1 season. Colapinto will become the first Formula 1 driver from Argentina since Gaston Mazzacane in the early 2000s. Collapinto is a Formula 2 driver. He's 6th currently in the Formula 2 standings. He's had his first win in his rookie season at Imola earlier this season. He's also had podiums at Catalonia and also the Red Bull Ring. This comes as a huge shock. I was just about to start cooking my tea when I just see this pop up. But yeah, it's confirmed. There's been rumours about Logan Sargeant getting the boot at Williams for quite some time now, but more in favour of Andrea Kimi Antonelli for the remainder of the season rather than Collapinto. Collapinto has proven himself to be a good Formula 2 driver. He's had a very good rookie campaign, and he's obviously a development driver for Williams too. I think he had a run out in practice at Silverstone. I know he's done some testing with the Formula 1 car. Let me just have a look here. There's an official statement from WilliamsF1.com here. So Williams Racing announces that Franco Colapinto will race with the team for the remainder of the 2024 Formula 1 World Championship season and will compete from the Italian Grand Prix alongside Alexander Albon. He will use the race number 43. Franco is a member of the Williams Racing Driver Academy and made his FP1 debut at the British Grand Prix earlier this season. His F2 campaign this year has seen him secure a race win at Imola and podiums at both Barcelona and the Austrian feature races, as well as 7 further point scoring outings. The 21-year-old will become the 49th Grand Prix driver for Williams Grand Prix Racing, is the first Argentine driver in Formula 1 for 23 years, and the second Argentine driver to drive for the British outfit after it's Carlos Reutemann. I knew that one, but then again, I'm a nerd. Hope you guys guessed it. The team would like to take this opportunity to thank Logan Sargeant for his hard work and contribution over the past 2 seasons. He has competed in 36 Grand Prix and at the USGP last year became the first American driver to score an F1 point since Michael Andretti 30 years prior. Wow, the US going a long time without a good Formula 1 driver. Logan will remain in the Williams family and will support him to continue his racing career. So yeah, I have heard very strong rumours that Sargeant is going to go to IndyCar next season to go for Prema, because Prema are going to race in IndyCar for the first time ever next season. That is confirmed 100%. Who their drivers will be is not yet known, but I imagine it's going to be Sargeant after this announcement. Colapinto said the following: "It's an honour to be making my Formula 1 debut with Williams. This is what dreams are made of. The team has such an amazing history and a mission to get back to the front, which I can't wait to be part of. Coming into F1 mid-season will be an enormous learning curve, but I am up for the challenge and I'm fully focused on working hard as hard as I can with Alex and the team to make it a success." James Vowles has also said, he's a team principal of course, he said, "To replace a driver mid-season is not a decision we have taken lightly, but we believe this gives Williams the best chance to compete for points over the remainder of the season. We have just brought a large upgrade to the car and need to maximise every point scoring opportunity in a remarkably tight midfield battle. We we also believe in investing in young drivers in the Williams Driver Academy, and Franco is getting a fantastic opportunity to demonstrate what he's capable of across the final 9 rounds of the season. It's undoubtedly an incredibly tough decision on Logan, who has given his all throughout his time at Williams, and we want to thank him for all his hard work and positive attitude. Logan remains a talented driver, and we will support him to continue his racing career for the future. I know that Franco has great speed and huge potential, and we look forward to seeing what he can do in F1. So there you go, that's the full statement from Williams. I mean, in terms of Williams, I'll have to see whether it's the right decision. At the end of the day, Logan has not been performing, unfortunately. There's been very strong rumours about him getting replaced mid-season for a long time. It's a bit strange how it happens literally one race after Zandvoort. It does feel like, oh well, you had your one chance and you messed up, basically. I don't know, I mean, it's just one of them things, isn't it? I mean, Logan just is not cut out for Formula 1. He's been miles off Alex Albon. Collapinto might be good enough for F1, we'll have to see how he gets on. I spoke to him a long time ago now on 5 Minutes With. There's a video for that. I will probably put that as a recommended video on YouTube. If you're on MSN or another platform, then just search up for Franco Colapinto on Formula1Chronicle.com. You'll be able to find it pretty easily. But yeah, I mean, it could be a move that really benefits the team. Time will tell whether it's a good one or not. But yeah, Colapinto basically has 9 races to prove that he is a good enough driver to race for Williams in 2025 alongside Alex. Not alongside Alex Albon, because obviously we've got Carlos Sainz. So what will happen with Colapinto after that? I don't know. It's an audition really for another team, maybe he'll go into another racing series eventually, but hey, it's a cool shot. It's a cool shot at Formula 1. He's obviously going to stay here for the rest of 24, and then after that, Carlos Sainz is going to take a seat for 25. So let's see what happens. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, guys. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know whether you think this is a good move for Williams, Colapinto, and whether you think it's the right move as well, getting rid of Sargeant like this. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and ring the bell as well to see much more F1 content on the F1 Chronicle just like this. So Logan Sargeant is out of Formula 1. He has been replaced by Franco Colapinto at Williams Formula 1 for the remainder of the season. So what happened to Logan? Why has he failed in Formula 1? What went wrong? And is this the right decision for Williams? I'm going to answer as much as I can now for you guys in less than 5 minutes. You know how these videos are. But yeah, I mean, first of all, I just want to say that I'm not a Logan hater. I don't hate the guy. He seems like a nice person, and he gave it his best shot at the end of the day. He was a good Formula 2 driver. He was not someone who really blew the field away. He is someone who was one of the best Formula 2 drivers in 2022 before he got promoted to the full-time Williams race seat in 2023. And he had a tough first season. But through all of that, he did become the first Formula 1 driver from the United States to score a Formula 1 point since Michael Andretti back in 1993. It had been 30 years since the States had a driver that scored a point in Formula 1, which I just find baffling. I don't even know how they've gone that long without having a driver that's decent. And by F1 standards, you could definitely say that Logan Sargeant was not good enough. And if you go all the way back to Michael Andretti, of course, an incredible IndyCar driver, but in Formula 1, frankly, he failed in my opinion. But that is another topic of conversation for another day, because he too was replaced mid-season by Mika Hakkinen in 1993, and the rest, as they say, is history. But when it comes to Sargeant, I do feel for the guy. I think he could have been decent, and this is the thing that the Williams were hoping of, that he could have been a good driver for them. You look at drivers that have come up from Formula 2, some of them are incredible, some of them, most notably champions, do very well, of course, unsurprisingly, the likes of Pierre Gasly, the likes of Oscar Piastri, but even guys that don't win the championship, guys like Lando Norris, they still do really well. I think George Russell actually won the championship in that year, but by the same token, even champions struggled. Nicholas Latifi, I think he won the championship, didn't he, in Formula 2 in 2019 before coming to, I remember it was 2020, but he came to Williams obviously after that. The fact remains though is that he didn't perform, Logan, unfortunately. He was consistently outperformed by Alex Albon, and Alex Albon is a great driver. I have no questions about that whatsoever, and I think he'll provide ample competition in the same car to Carlos Sainz, who I also think is an excellent driver next season at Williams. So Logan knew that he was going to be out of the car for the end of the next year, and he knew realistically he was also going to be out of Formula 1 as a result. No one was really going to take a risk on him at that point. But you look at the head-to-head you look at the head-to-head, this is purely just based on Grand Prix that Albon and Sargeant have competed in for the Williams team. Albon in that time has scored 31 points, Sargeant has scored just 1. Albon has out-qualified Logan Sargeant every single time, 35-0. And when they've both finished as well, Albon has always finished ahead of Logan, 25-0. And if you take it from a laps point of view as well, and all these stats, by the way, are provided by therace.com, so shout out to those guys. But if you take it as a lap, every single lap, Sargeant led ahead of Albon 113 laps. Albon led ahead of Sargeant for 1,592 racing laps. So quite simply, Sargeant was not good enough. He did not perform, and unfortunately, his crash at the Dutch Grand Prix in a cost cap era where that is going to impact how much Williams can spend on research and development, wind tunnel time, anything like that, wages, whatever you want to say. Unfortunately, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Apparently they wanted Liam Lawson, apparently there was other people in the running as well for that seat, but it's gone to Collapinto, who I think could well do a good job, if only for this season, because he's not going to be at Williams next season, he's going to be doing something else, whether that's another F1 seat, which is unlikely, or racing in another series like Formula 2, which is more likely. As for Sargeant, he's probably going to go to IndyCar. I really think he's going to go to IndyCar to be one of the Premier drivers for next season in their debut IndyCar season. But yeah, I mean, that's the long and short of it, guys. I know it might sound like a bit of a wishy-washy answer, but the stats don't lie. Sargeant has just not been quick enough, he's not been consistent enough, and he's been destroyed by Albon. And the thing is as well, that, you know, Williams have gotten a much better chance, or at least as good of a chance, with someone who is a complete novice in Formula 1 in Collapinto to compete against Alpine, because Williams are going for Alpine. Simple as that. They want to get that 8th place in the Constructors' Championship, and with Sargeant, realistically, they're not going to do that. The guy's scored 1 point in his entire career so far, and none this season. So there we go, guys. That's my thoughts on Logan. Wish him all the best, obviously, but unfortunately, it's cutthroat business, Formula 1. If you're not good enough, you're out, and he's out. But yeah, for much more Formula 1 news and reaction, do keep it tuned here to the F1Chronicle.com, where we've got many more videos coming up in the run-up to the Italian Grand Prix, so see you very soon. So we've already brought you some stories when it comes to Monza and the improvements that have been made to the track ahead of the 2024 Italian Grand Prix. This is all to comply with Formula 1 regulations. It's got some more upgrades coming ahead of the 2026 race if it gets a new contract, which the organisers thankfully are confident of being able to do so. However, it's emerged that apparently the F1 drivers are not impressed with the upgrade to the Monza circuit. Now, there's a full article about this on the F1Chronicle.com. I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to read it to you now, and I'll kind of give my take on what's actually been said here. So, multiple Formula 1 drivers have expressed their disappointment with the upgrade works carried out to Monza. The historic circuit has not only been totally resurfaced, but some corners were even widened or had subtle camber tweaks, while the new curbs at Ascari have been made much more like a modern Formula 1 track. George Russell said the following: "We've had many times that the drivers are often the last to know when these changes are happening on track." Okay, so I think this might be in reference to F1 drivers not being impressed at how late these upgrades have come in compared to, you know, being prepared, because obviously they don't just turn up at the track and just drive. They do simulator work, they do track walks, they do all this kind of stuff in all the weeks and sometimes in this case maybe even a month or so before the race actually gets underway, because you got to prepare for these tracks. But going off what George Russell's saying here, it sounds like the drivers are not impressed at how late these additions have been made and that they weren't aware of them. So he went on and said the following as well: "Personally, I think it's a bit of a shame, because Ascari was an example of a corner that had its own character with really unique curbs. I've always liked these old school tracks, and they need to be preserved." They do. I mean, look, this is down to the driver's opinions at the end of the day. For me personally, that I get you want the unique aspect, you also need to make it safe too, but you also want it to be a challenge, which is a real knife-edge thing to figure out. Daniel Ricciardo told the media after his Thursday track inspection, "I can't say I'm impressed, but because I think that some details have taken away the character of the track. It was a bit of an old-fashioned track, but that's over now. The asphalt looks great, but I'm disappointed about the curbs. I think they underestimate how important the curbs are on a track, and how they change the feeling, the character, the attitude, and he will feel that through his backside, basically. Well, literally while he's driving. I don't want to be rude, but that is literally what they do. They use their rear end, their driver's rear end, not the car's rear end, to actually feel how the track feels. So it probably just feels quite strange, to be fair, especially since it's a track that he's driven around since 2011 in Daniel Ricciardo's case. In the case of Alonso, he's been here for over 20 years now. Haas's Kevin Magnussen also added, I just hope it still feels like Monza. Speaking of Alonso, he revealed that Aston Martin even scrapped its original plan to run reserve driver Felipe Drugovich in initial free practice on Friday. We realised that the amount of changes was greater than we thought at first. And that actually goes along with what I'm seeing right now, because I'm recording this as free practice 1 is taking place, and Kimi Antonelli has crashed on his second flying lap for Mercedes AMG. So that kind of goes, that makes sense. This track is a completely different beast, not only for the experienced drivers, but for the new guys too. Antonelli would have been doing all this preparation in the simulator and stuff like that, but now he's come to the track and it probably feels completely different. Some insiders initially thought that a new surface was to blame for Bernd Mailander's bizarre high-speed crash. Well, yes, of course, the safety car crashed on Thursday, guys. Did you see that? Oh, I would show it, but again, F1 would demonetize this video faster than you can say Autodromo Nazionale di Monza, so not really going to happen, is it? But do check it out. It did happen, genuinely. He crashed the car, and he's someone who is very experienced around this track and very experienced in the safety car as well. It's not like a new car for him. However, it appears to have been a rare brake failure. It was quite the bang, said the chairman after the ultra-rare crash. But I'm not hurt at all. It was my first experience with Tech Pro. When I was still a racing driver, Tech Pro didn't even exist. Well, sounds like he's taking the positives out of it. But yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, the things off the track, I understand why they've done all them, the fan zone, the upgrades to the paddock, all this and that, the tunnel, whatever. It all makes sense. That's fair enough. When it comes to the actual curves, I don't know. I mean, I listen, I'm going to defer to the drivers on this one. I know it might sound like a bit of a cop-out, but I'm going to defer to what the drivers are saying. If they say they don't like it, it's probably not good. So I'm going to take that stance as well. But guys, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Resurfacing, great. Curbs, maybe not so much. Let us know your thoughts on the Monza changes in the comments below. And of course, keep it subscribed to the F1Chronicle.com to see much more video content on Formula 1 just like this.